Good day, people of the internet. I am Chris Baker from LuckyGunner.com, and today I am looking at the new Smith Wesson M&P 22 Magnum. It looks like the gun buying public is finally growing weary of polymer striker-fired 9mm, so gun companies are experimenting with more new cartridges like 30 Super Carry, as well as some of the existing second-tier bench warmer cartridges like 5.7x28 and 22 Magnum. Earlier this year, Smith & Wesson brought us the M&P 5.7 with a new form factor that differs a bit from the other centerfire pistols in the M&P series. The M&P 22 Magnum is based on the 5.7 version. They have the same frame and slide dimensions, the same trigger, and both pistols use the tempo barrel system, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, let's look at the other basic specs and features. The M&P 22 Magnum is a single action only internal hammer fired pistol with a manual ambidextrous thumb safety. The slide release is also ambidextrous and the mag release is reversible. Fully loaded, it weighs 26.6 ounces with a 4.35 inch barrel. The drift adjustable iron sights come with a serrated black rear and a green fiber optic front. The flat face trigger has a nice light take up, braking at just over 4.5 pounds. It's not outstanding by single action standards, but it also lacks the mushiness that you get in a lot of striker fired pistols. By the way, the manual advises you to not dry fire the pistol like I just did. That is unusual among modern pistols, even with Rimfire models, so try to keep that in mind. The slide is optics ready, compatible with the RMSC footprint, but there's a catch. When you remove the polymer slide cover, you expose the firing pin channel. You can direct mount the optic without any adapter plate, but it'll have to be an optic with a closed bottom. A lot of optics with this footprint have an open bottom, like this SIG Romeo Zero. They rely on the slide itself to hold the battery in place, but obviously that's not going to work with this pistol. So you'll need either some kind of bottom cover for that optic or a closed bottom optic like this Holosun HS507K. Because it is a direct mount system, the optic sits nice and low, which is an ideal setup. With the Holosun, you can just barely see the sights through the optic window. I can see the top quarter of the front sight when it's lined up with the rear. Okay, but here is the really fun part, the magazine. 30 round capacity. Of course, KelTec was the first to give us a 30 round 22 Magnum with the PMR 30 over a decade ago. In fact, for a long time, it was the only semi-auto 22 Magnum on the market. A few others have come out in recent years, but until now, none of them had more than half the mag capacity of the PMR 30. Unfortunately, the PMR 30 is also notorious for subpar reliability and durability. Despite that, it has remained an exceptionally popular pistol, thanks in no small part to the generous magazine capacity. So, all Smith & Wesson would have to do in order to take the title away from KelTec is make a reasonably priced 30-round 22 Magnum that works. Did they do it? Well, after running 1,000 rounds through this particular M&P 22 Magnum, I would have to say the answer is a big maybe. They got the reasonably priced part right. The MSRP is $650, and right now it's selling for around $600 at most places. That's about $100 more than the KelTec, but that gets you a pistol that appears to be far superior in terms of materials and build quality. Aside from the polymer body magazines, it feels like a serious pistol. It fits right in with the other members of the M&P family. Now, if I were gonna be picky, and why wouldn't I be? The design has room for improvement in a few areas. The magazines are a little tricky to load. They're nothing like the infuriating nightmare of the PMR 30 mags, but it can be a bit tedious to get each round pushed back all the way to the back of the magazine. I can see that being a challenge for inexperienced shooters. The thumb safety, it's very narrow. It's almost like they were hoping you wouldn't notice it's there. This is not a low-profile carry gun. There's no reason the safety could not have more of an ergonomic shelf like many of the other pistols in the M&P series. And my last nitpick is the lack of a threaded barrel. You cannot attach a suppressor to this pistol. And that seems strange since the M&P 5.7 barrel is threaded. Now, I'm not sure if that's a limitation of this pistol design with this cartridge or if they just left it off to keep the cost down. The PMR 30 is not compatible with a suppressor even if you get a threaded barrel for it, so That could have been an easy way for Smith to one-up KelTec. It's a little disappointing that they did not include that feature. Since the release of Smith & Wesson's folding 9mm carbine earlier this year, they've been catching a lot of grief online for copying KelTec. Maybe they deserve that, at least a little. That said, the M&P 22 Magnum is a completely unique design. The PMR 30 uses a hybrid blowback locked breech system. The M&P 22 Magnum is gas operated using the Smith & Wesson Tempo barrel system. The barrel here is actually in two pieces. What you can see right now and here is actually the outer barrel sleeve. The barrel itself is inside of there. If we take it apart, you can see that there is a gas port, this little hole in the top of the barrel near the muzzle end. Some of the gas that's forcing the bullet out of the barrel bleeds through that hole and pushes the barrel back. The slide and barrel travel together for the first quarter inch or so, and then the barrel stops and the slide keeps going so the case can extract. In theory, this system should be reliable with a wide variety of ammo types, but cycling has always been a tricky thing with any semi-auto using a rimmed cartridge, and the round has a long way to travel between the magazine and the chamber. That is a lot of opportunity for something to go wrong. This M&P was very reliable with 4 of the 5 loads I ran through it. All 5 are included on Smith & Wesson's list of recommended ammo for this pistol. The one that gave me trouble was the CCI MaxiMag 40 grain TMJ. That's a flat tip bullet. With that load, the gun would fail to feed, extract, or eject about 50% of the time. I tried it with and without the optic installed. Nothing I did would make it feed better. The jacketed hollow point version of that same load cycles just fine. It's the same bullet weight and velocity as the TMJ load, so it seems like it would have to be the bullet profile that's the problem. That doesn't explain the failure to extract and eject, so I'm not sure what to make of it. I think this gun is going to be like most 22 long rifle pistols. You're just going to have to try different loads and find the ones that your particular pistol likes to feed. In any case, the other 4 loads were almost 100% reliable. And I say almost because I did have quite a few failures to extract, but they were predictable. I did not have a single issue with the other loads until the gun got hot. Heat buildup is a common issue with gas-operated pistol designs. On the M&P, that heat doesn't reach the grip. It's not going to burn your hand or anything like that. But the barrel and slide do get extremely hot, and that apparently compromises reliability. There's actually a warning about this in the owner's manual. It says that after extended rapid firing, some ammo might have difficulty extracting. In my experience, the Hornady VMAX had the most trouble when the gun was hot, but none of the loads that we had with us were immune to this issue. The manual does not define extended rapid firing. I wasn't doing repeated mag dumps, but I wasn't taking my time either. We only had the 2 magazines that came with the gun, so we had to take a break at least every 60 rounds to load more ammo. Both times I ran into this issue, it was after firing roughly 250 rounds within about a 30-minute time period. 10 to 15 minutes of cooldown time was long enough to let it cycle another couple of magazines without any issues. The interesting part of this is that the gun doesn't seem to get gradually less reliable as it heats up. It would be running 100% with no problems, and then I'd load a new magazine and the pistol would just say no. I'd start getting failures every other round. So if you have feeding issues right off the bat when you get this gun, just make sure it is clean and lubed and that you've got a high, firm grip. If it still won't work, try a different type of ammo. And if you only have problems when the gun is warm, just let it cool off for a minute and see if they go away. But I can tell you that you're not going to want to wait for it to cool off because shooting this pistol is just too much fun. There's next to no recoil. It's like a very loud 22 long rifle. Low recoil with a dot is beyond easy mode shooting. It's also extremely accurate. I shot 5-round groups from the bench at 25 yards with those same 5 loads I mentioned earlier. The average group size hovered between 1 and 2 inches. That is fantastic for a stock handgun. It's definitely better than any out-of-the-box centerfire pistol I've tried. With that kind of accuracy, combined with the low recoil, the massive magazine capacity, it's an excellent plinking pistol. It's something that you could use to teach a new shooter. It would also be great for pest control for property owners who don't want to lug around a long gun all the time. Of course, what everybody really wants to know is whether this would make a suitable self-defense pistol. It's light enough to be carried all day, but it's also quite large, especially the grip length. So in most cases, we would be looking at a potential home defense gun. For that role, I have trouble of thinking of many reasons why a full-size 9mm would not be a better option. You would get the improved reliability of a rimless centerfire cartridge with roughly the same or even slightly lower cost per round. And while 22 Magnum seems to punch above its weight in terms of terminal ballistics, 9mm certainly has the more impressive resume as a defensive cartridge. The 30-round magazines might seem like an advantage, but to paraphrase Tom Givens, in a gunfight, you're probably going to run out of time before you run out of ammo. So this would not be my first choice for a home defense gun. It would not even be in my top 10, at least not for the average person. Where it might make more sense is for shooters with medical issues that might prevent them from using a pistol with more recoil. I would not necessarily include small statured shooters in that group. That's because while this grip is nice and thin, it's also fairly long from front to back, so the trigger reach might be an issue for people with extra small hands. But let's say your hands are big enough for this gun, but you've got like severe arthritis or some kind of nerve damage or something like that. The M&P 22 Magnum gives you an option that's a step up from a 22 long rifle, but with similar felt recoil. The slide is not too difficult to rack, and if you mount an optic to it, you even got a little handle here to help you out with that. Now, the M&P 5.7 and other pistols chambered for that cartridge also have very little recoil, along with the benefit of centerfire reliability, at least in theory. The trade-off there is the increased cost of ammo. So how does 22 Magnum compare to 5.7 ballistically? That is something we're working on right now. We've got a ballistic gel comparison of these two cartridges coming later this fall, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, if you are considering the M&P 22 Magnum, remember it's also going to crave some ammo, so be sure to get it from us with lightning fast shipping at luckygunner.com.